Hello, welcome to SHOWstudio Head to Head. We're going to talk about London, Autumn-Winter 18, going back sometimes, but we'll try to remember what happened. And I'm very happy to tell you that Stephen Jones is back. Hi,
Hello.
Stephen.
Hi, Mimma. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
Fine, fine. I mean, this is, in fact, a mid-season between the mid-seasons because we're almost halfway between Autumn-Winter 18 and the cruise shows, which are in about a month and a half's time.
So this is perfect timing.
Perfect timing.
Okay, do you remember anything about what happened in London?
No, I have complete amnesia after every collection in order that I can do the next lot.
Okay, let me refresh. Your memory with the talking town of this past season was, of course, Queen Elizabeth II.
Yes, yes.
So Her Majesty graced her presence at Richard Queen, no pun intended, show to give him the first Queen Elizabeth II award.
Yes. An
award that is given to young upcoming designers. So Richard Queen was told apparently 2 days before, so he wasn't absolutely aware of it when he was starting creating his collection, and nobody in the audience, apart obviously from the BFC representative Carolyn Rush and probably Anna Wintour and the 3 or 4 people in the front row knew. So there was that chair there empty with a pillow on it, and someone told me that they thought, who's the princess who wants a pillow on her chair? Well, actually it was the Queen. Anyway, so the Queen appeared. People asked where was Vogue UK, where was Edward, who happened to have already flown to Milan because Milan was starting with the Genius project by Moncler.
Yep. Yep.
And so he was absent, which I also think was a little bit unfortunate. Anyhow, before going into the collection, what do you think? What happened there?
Well, I was absent as well. In fact, Her Majesty went around...
Had you been invited?
No. Went around the exhibition and came to see hedonism, which is the thing that I work on with the British Fashion Council to help young milliners, and she was fascinated by the hats and came and
Sorry, were you there?
Unfortunately, I wasn't there, no, because I hadn't been told about it. And none of the exhibitors, in fact, they'd almost started to pack up because it was the last show on the last day and the last afternoon. And everybody was told to move their stands and organise them, and people didn't know what was going on, and I wondered who on earth it was. But delighted, absolutely delighted when they saw that it was the Queen.
So did she stop there and talk to them?
Yeah, she stopped and talked to them, and I think this was just after the show. But it was absolutely, it was a photograph which went around the world. And you know what's extraordinary, that every designer every season wants to come up with a new design, but actually the picture that made it on the cover of all the press was a photograph of the Queen. Absolutely,
that was probably the most posted and picture. And I remember I was not there, I was home, and suddenly, you know, when on Instagram you're warned that someone you follow are doing a story, a live story. So I looked at it and I could see the Queen talking on a podium, you know, it was at the end, but there was no Carolyn Rush next to her, or there was, but I didn't know exactly what it was. It took me some time to understand. It was pretty fun.
Yes, yes. Well, Anna was there, Anna Wintour, sitting next to her. And I know in this photograph she's wearing her dark glasses, but I know when the Queen arrived, Anna was not wearing her glasses, but put them on for the show.
Where's the proof here? Tell me the evidence. Did you see that?
No, no, no. From what people have told me.
Someone told you?
Yeah, what people have told me.
I don't think those glasses are really what one should have inside next to the Queen. But anyway, that's just me.
I was a little surprised as well. But, you know, she's wearing dark glasses and the Queen's wearing black gloves. So in a way they match. Said he, trying to put as good a spin on it as possible.
Yeah, except that she's the Queen. On to the collection. I don't know if you watched it. It was very interesting. And there was another thing that Diet Prada commented that was a total copy of Balenciaga. And Susie Lau, Susie Bubble, protected Richard very much. I mean, she came out fiercely on his defense, saying from his first collection after his MA, he's been doing flower, there's no Balenciaga inspiration here. Well, I mean, as much as I think he's great and as much as I'm sure he will have a great future, especially with this publicity, there is a lot of not only Balenciaga, but a lot of Volkova style in there. And I wonder, I mean, what's the fine line between inspiration and appropriation?
Well, actually going back to Diet Prada's comment,
yeah,
yes, in a way, it was like Balenciaga, but Balenciaga himself used fabrics which were British and which were perceived as being very floral. A lot of Balenciaga's fabrics were made by this man called Zika Asher in the 50s and 60s, who also created fabrics for Christian Dior. But a lot of the very volumetric and flower print, repeat flower prints, was seen at that time as being very British. So, no, it isn't a copy, it's a cycle of fashion. And I think it was a fantastic expression of, you know, English flower prints, wallpaper. You know, we've all stayed in houses that have got 3 or 4 different floral wallpapers, and that's the genius of British interiors, that they don't look French, where everything's very chic and symmetrically arranged, or Italian, where everything's very modernly designed. They look sort of slightly quaint and quirky. So I think he was very good in using all those multi-florals. That's
why we love you, because you always have some inside information that I personally lack, and a good answer to think. Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a very strong collection. I love the little touch of, they will probably come up now, of the scarves on the head, exactly like the Queen does when she's at Balmoral.
Yeah.
Which, you know, someone said, oh, he didn't know that's his style. Again, you know, it's his Britishness, but yeah, it was very good. There's a little bit of styling that reminds me of what Demna did for Balenciaga, though. Yes, but in a funny way, you know, the Queen went to the show here, the Queen show. She didn't go to the Balenciaga show. And in that crazy world of fashion, which is a very level playing field, that's what matters. Wow, that was quite a statement. Yeah, but it is. And, you know, I think he's here and now, and he's London. And, you know, and there's the crash helmet, and everything references everything else. You know, Diet Prada is a fantastic, entertaining website. But not always right. Not always right, but it's very difficult to get it right, and they don't always pick up on everything, and there's 5 different arguments for every design. It's never really that person is copying that person, even though it may appear very, very direct. Yes, I mean, you could say that the helmets look like Walter van Beirendonck. You could say that the shoes and the boots all in one could look like Rafat Dior. You could say that using florals look like Erdem. You know, if you wanted to say those things, you could do. The fact of the matter is, this was his first proper show, and he did a good job. Yeah, I just want Richard Quindon not to think that I'm against what he did. I think he's very talented, and I think he has a great future ahead of him. Yeah. He had also the greatest publicity that can ever happen to someone as young, so kudos. I mean, what I find really extraordinary is that the Queen is giving a prize for fashion design. Well, I think that's very interesting, but on that note, I don't know I mean, who's choosing who wins? Is it really the Queen entourage? I don't think she's there looking at designers, but I mean, her entourage, or is it the BFC, or is it a little bit in between? Do you know anything about this? Not really, but I can imagine Angela, who designs a lot of her clothes. She helps. And Caroline Rush and the BFC, and probably Sarah Moore, who's head of New Gen. Yeah. You know, all of them together will decide on something. But I'm quite sure that it's the Queen who will make the final decision. Oh, really? Oh, yes. So they put like 4 designers in front of her, and she said, I like that floral, very British Remember, style. She has more experience of fashion design, wearing clothes than any of us, so. Fantastic. Shall we move on? Yeah. I could talk about this forever, but I think we need to cover other thing, and I cannot help but going into Matty Bowen and those incredible hats. So let's start from what you did for this show, and then discuss the show.
I have known Matty on and off for quite a while now. He's one of the sort of party people around London, even though he lives up in Yorkshire. And he's a great friend of Giles Deacon, Katie Grand, all those people. People who I hang out with. And Matty's always there and has always been extraordinary. And we have talked about doing something together for a while. And funnily enough, we were actually on a bus from Bistrotech restaurant.
It was after your party?
After my party, on the way to Hoi Polloi, and we were going from one to the other, and we started talking and we said, let's do something together. So, you know, inspiration can happen at any time. And then we met up, and I had some reference pictures of interesting things that, you know, with very big volumes, and the hats with the balloons on were something that, in a funny way, I'd always wanted to do. I'd had this in my head for about 25 years, and then I suggested that to him.
They couldn't be.
And we were working with, you know.
You never know.
You know, things turn, and it was somehow that idea found its resting place, and it was the right place and the right time. But technically, I didn't know how it was going to work, because of course these are helium balloons, and how could we actually make it work and control them so they were sort of in a tulle bag, and how could we make it so they were tightly packed so when the girls moved along they didn't wobble about. So even though they looked just like balloons on the head, there was probably, I don't know, days and days and days and days of toiles, prototypes to try and get them to work like that.
They don't look just like balloons on the head. One can see there is some mastercraft in there. But were they light? Were they, I mean...
Yes, absolutely. They supported their own weight. That's why you can have something which is so big. You know, the other headdresses which are as big as that are showgirls' headdresses. And it's, I know for the Lido in Paris, the maximum that the showgirls can wear is 4 kilos for about 3 minutes.
4 kilos is a lot.
4 kilos is really a lot. And you know, the girls' neck muscles just are not strong enough. So when I think back to the giant hats that I made with John and perched them on, you know, Stella's neck, fine swan-like neck, I think, oh my God, she was so incredible for having done that. But working with Matty was great, because he really had that excitement of putting on, you know, one of his very early shows, and everybody really helped to make it work.
Okay.
A lot of people within the London fashion business really helped, because they could see that he really believed in what he does. So
did he design those 5, I think they are, 5 last looks, starting from what he knew they were going to have on their heads, or?
No, I knew he was doing a lot of hat and knit, and he had a loom at home as well. And we talked about big volumes, and I said that maybe we could have a big volume to go with that on the head. So there was a big body with a narrow head, and then so the silhouette would sort of mirror itself. But there were many other themes within the collection. I mean, I love the collection. Of course, it's really at the beginning for him, and he'll need to do a set of commercial clothes that can be bought by stores and everything. But
but that was so smart. It was one of the best passages between crazy and slightly commercial. I thought it was an amazing collection. But let me ask you about this balaclava thing going around, and probably you've been asked about balaclava by other people. I mean, there's been so many. Is it like a power thing, a revolution thing? What is this balaclava trend that nobody can wear, because we all look very bad in a balaclava, like waking up in the morning and going out?
I don't know.
Made up by professionals.
It's so weird. You think that would look weird one season, and then 6 months later everybody's wearing it and saying it's the best since sliced bread. That's just the craziness and fabulousness of fashion.
I think everybody looks good.
I will make you
except me. Trust me, I know.
That's because you don't have one of my beanies.
You put me in a hat here, so
because you haven't got one of my beanies, so you know, I will put it on you, and we will find the way, guaranteed. Maybe we'll even try balaclava too. But what does a balaclava mean? I don't think it has any particular hidden meaning, but what it does to the silhouette it changes everything completely, because suddenly normally you're taking the hair away, which is a very strong look because it focuses the viewer's eyes on the face. It's not softened by anything. So it's so extreme, but it's extreme by taking the hair away. Of course, the eyes become the expression and all the features become just much more important. And it's actually, in a visual balance, is very good for a winter collection, because then you can play with having sort of big collars, because that's very tight, so you can have volume here. Yeah. So as silhouettes become more dramatic, they're counterbalanced by having a very tight, small head.
Don't you think there's something political linked to it about, it's about the times we're living and the uncertainties?
Is it protecting you?
Well, I don't know. I mean, balaclava, it's always been something like, the bandit or the bank robbers. It's something
Well, those are balaclavas when they're full with little holes put in.
Yeah, but you put masks on them as well, right?
No, these were makeup. This was makeup.
Yeah, maybe I'm mixing up with Dior.
Yeah, but I mean, yes, there were masks as well. But I think it's a strong look. These were actually combined with hair. This was Sam McKnight doing the hair for this, and the hair coming out of the bottom looked very, very strong.
It's very beautiful, with that skirt, which is unfinished and unprecise. I think there is something a little bit political in that look, but I'm not making you say that if you don't want to.
Well, all fashion is political to some extent.
Very much. And we saw this in this season. I think the whole month was full of messages and subtle and less
It's very
subtle.
interesting how some fashion editors have reacted to that, because I think women really understand that message from fashion.
Yeah.
But I think some fashion editors feel slightly upended by that idea, because it's bypassing them, because it's not just the skirt should be pink or green this season. And I've seen a few articles saying, oh, thank heavens that political fashion is behind us, and now we're just talking about whether it's a low heel or a high heel.
Really? This season?
I read some articles like that, and I think they risk being very disassociated from their audience, who are very interested in fashion having a political point of view, or somehow representing.
Well, what I always say is that, Hollywood and fashion are probably the biggest platforms in the world. So if you have something to say, take advantage of these incredibly varied and big.
Yeah, and if you're Jennifer Lawrence or Rihanna and wearing a T-shirt,
that matters, and that really can change the narrative. Do you want to finally
because
be the first one to
apparently our regular viewers are very disappointed we never
eat.
So are you going to, should we eat?
I let you do it. You're the guest. I mean,
oh really?
I just don't want to have cream around my face while I'm trying to sound clever.
I don't care.
Go ahead. So I'm in the meantime, I'm going to talk and asking you about another show you collaborated in, and maybe a designer who is a little bit less known by the non-fashionistas masses, and that's Ryan Lowe, who actually is doing very well. So he's known more than I think. Who did this very pink, very girly, very actually interesting. It was so consistent in everything, the holistic pinkness of it. In London at the Sketch restaurant, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. And this was an installation.
Yes, tell us about that.
And there were some dressed mannequins seated, and then there were some real girls walking around.
So it was between reality and non-reality?
Yeah. And between gender, absolutely, as well, which he is. I mean, he personally sometimes is wearing trousers, sometimes is wearing a dress.
Yeah.
I think it's all up for grabs, and it's about sweetness and enjoyment. And in fact, commercially, yes, he is very successful now.
Yeah, where? I mean, here or in Asia, or do you know?
I think fairly uniquely, it's sort of both. He does sell particularly well in Asia, I know, because of that sweetness in the clothes. But technically, the clothes are very good, and they all fasten up, and they're graded properly in sizes, and they're comfortable to wear, and you can clean them. I mean, to some people might think this is unusual, but within the high fashion world, often things cannot be cleaned, or they are not graded.
Oh, I know that.
so there is a sort of practical side to it. So even though he does have this great fantasy, there is a reality too. But it is all totally pink.
I loved that, you know, that strong message about exactly, you know, the mannequin, so the unreal human being, so representation of human being, and the real girls walking around, and then the lightness of it all with the pink and the tulle and the lace and the very girly dresses. I thought it was quite striking.
Yeah. And also, I think his choice of showing instead, you know, everybody says, oh, the fashion show is dead, and let's do a film or let's do an installation. And often, I mean, fashion show is a very good way of showing a lot of clothes very quickly. And he wanted to do something different. He wanted to do something more intimate. In fact, the cost of doing a show like this is almost as much as doing a regular fashion show. It's just, you know, this is probably the polar opposite to Burberry, which was a huge show with a giant production with hundreds of models.
Did you have anything to do with the Burberry show?
No. I mean, I was there, so that was great.
Christopher's Goodbye.
Christopher's Goodbye, and it was a bit, you know, his golden grades, the hits that he's done over the years. And I think it's interesting that in one way we have Richard Quinn, which is the start of something, and Christopher's show, which is the end of something.
Yeah, I mean, I have this soft spot for Christopher Bailey. I think he's a fantastic human being, very decent guy, great designer. He did an amazing job at Burberry. Nobody can deny that. That wasn't my favorite show, and I would have wanted him to leave me, at least, with tears in my eyes for the beauty of the show. So I don't know what he wanted really to do with this, you know. It wasn't, he tried to be...
We need to get it over and done with.
Probably, you know, that's a good answer. But I don't care, in fact, because I think one thing that Nick said to me once is that what matters is your career. Is not one thing that you've done, you know. And I think his career was extraordinary, and I'm not sure that it's over. I know he wants to take time off and live a life, but I hope he will come back somehow. But you know, this show in particular, for me, was quite weird.
Yeah, and I'm not. I don't think. I mean, I think in certain ways, you know, taking the Burberry check and making it into a rainbow Burberry check for the queer community was fantastic. You know, it was so good that he did that as his final show. But in a funny way, you know, fashion is changing.
Yeah.
When he was channeling Virginia Woolf and being very poetic about what he was creating, which was maybe 10 years ago, at the moment, in fashion, that sort of thing, sort of design approach, is not so now.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is, when we think of what's going on at Louis Vuitton Homme, for example, with Virgil going there, you know, it's a very different way of designing.
Yeah.
And maybe
it's a very different way of approaching also what the people want, what the audiences want.
Yeah, and you know, we're all moving on, and maybe Christopher as well has thought, well, you know, I've done it, I did it in my way, and maybe he knows that his way is not so...
Especially that will not be Riccardo Tisci's way, and I think one thing that I like is when the next designer will not copy the previous one, and I know that Riccardo Tisci is going to...
It's like Hedy going to Celine.
Exactly, Hedy going to Celine.
Yeah.
That's what I said, you know, you can like him or not, but at least he's not going to try to be Phoebe. And so, yeah, what do you think about the choice of Riccardo? I know that Marco Gobbetti and Riccardo Tisci worked together at Givenchy.
Yeah,
I was sure he was bringing Phoebe there, but maybe he wanted, but maybe Phoebe said, no, I have enough. I hoped it was Phoebe, because I want to wear what she does again.
Well, I think Phoebe wanted to spend more time in London with her family, and in a way like Christopher sort of had enough for a while.
Yeah, and so Riccardo...
You know, when you're a big fashion designer, it is your life to the exclusion of everything else. And I think, yes, designers do live in a gilded cage and have cars waiting for them and flunkies to do this, that and the other, because they are on being a designer every single second of the day and night. And you know, if they try and think about their family or their health or anything else at all, they would be perceived as, by their employers or slightly by themselves, as sort of wasting time. It's to that extreme, and it has to be. It doesn't have to be, but in today's society, today's design world, it is like that. So that's why I completely understand that these people want to have some time off. Hedy himself has had some time off.
Yeah.
You know, maybe this is the new pattern of the future, that designers will work from when they leave college for 3 or 4 years at a design house when they are younger, and then they'll take a few years off, then they'll come back and do something else, then they'll take a few years off.
I think they can only take a few years off and come back big when they're already big, though. They can't disappear when they're unknown.
No, absolutely, and they have to leave it successfully.
So, you know, the Hedys and the Ricardos and the Phoebes and the Christophers, they can.
Yeah, Hedy's done that.
Yeah, twice.
Yeah.
Between Dior and Saint Laurent and between Saint Laurent and now, but
Ricardo's doing that. He's really strong.
Ricardo's been out for 3 years.
I'm so fascinated to see what he's going to do.
Me
with
too.
Burberry.
I can't wait. And I, you know, again, you think you have to be consistent with the DNA of the brand, what the brand stands for. Does that really matter again? I mean, still, it's, I don't know, but he's an Italian guy with an Italian CEO in a very British brand, and he's quite goth and dark, and so it's going to be...
in Britain is not goth and dark. Go to any shopping centre in Britain, and there's always a few goths hanging out there in the centre, you know, disaffected youth.
I can't wait for you and I to discuss this in a few months when we will see his first show.
Yeah, he came to, in a funny way, when you're outside, you can see the reality of inside more clearly than somebody who is inside. So, for example, when John went to Dior, he could see the idea of Dior as a Britishman coming to France much clearer than a Frenchman could. In a way, Ricardo can maybe see the DNA and understand the world of Burberry very, very clearly because he is an outsider.
And he's an Anglophile, apparently.
Yeah, no, completely.
Well, let's see what's happened.
Very, very exciting. What is very different, though, from Givenchy to Burberry is that when you had Givenchy, you had LVMH around Givenchy protecting that. Burberry is very different. Burberry, you have the shareholders who are asking, how are the sales last week? If you don't get a fantastic review from everybody, your share price will go down.
Yeah, but Stephen, do you think that Mr. Arnault doesn't do that?
I think he does, but it's certainly not as public in the way that
it's
Burberry
not as public. That's true.
Very different world.
We need to close, but...
Okay. Always lots to talk about in London.
We will talk about Ricardo very soon.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.